Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. My name is Caleb, and the story I'm about to share still lingers like a faint bruise. When my fiancée, Amara, offhandedly told me she had a date just months before our wedding, she didn't see my reaction coming. It broke her, and I could sense she wasn't ready for the weight of my words. Every syllable I chose, and every silence that followed, was deliberate. But before you start piecing it together or jumping to conclusions, let me take you back to where it all began. We didn't start in this fractured place. Things were once alive with hope until they unraveled, one thread at a time. I want to guide you through how we went from building a future to watching it collapse. Amara and I had been together for just over 3 years, engaged for the last one. I met her at a volunteer cleanup event in Denver. Nothing romantic at the outset. She was part of the organizing crew, and I got her number to stay in the loop about the schedule. After the event wrapped, we kept texting light, easy messages that slowly turned into something more. One chat bled into the next, and before long, we were friends, then something deeper. Dating felt like it was always meant to happen. Over time, we forged something solid, and after 2 years, I proposed during a quiet hike in the Rockies. She said yes, her eyes shining, and we were engaged. By then, we were knee-deep in the mess of adult life. I was grinding through a job at a logistics company, and Amara was hustling as a content creator. Our days were long, packed with deadlines and responsibilities, but we made room for each other. As the wedding crept closer, we started talking about moving in together. It seemed practical. Why not start sharing a space before the vows? But there was a snag. My place in the suburbs was a nightmare commute from her co-working space downtown. We tossed around ideas, but the hassle felt overwhelming, especially with wedding plans piling up. We were drained, so we let the idea drop. Looking back, I wonder if that was the first misstep. If we'd pushed through, maybe we'd have caught the distance growing between us earlier. The shift didn't happen all at once. It was slow, like a tide pulling us apart. Amara and I had always been busy, so I didn't immediately notice the changes. She used to answer my calls on the first ring or shoot back a text if she missed one. But then, her responses started to lag. I'd call, and it'd go to voicemail. No text, no call back, just hours of nothing. When she finally got back to me, it was always the same story. Sorry, my phone was in my purse, or work was insane. She'd say it with a tone that expected me to nod and move on. No questions asked. I tried to shrug it off. Life gets chaotic, right? Then came the cancellations. We'd plan dinners or a night at the arcade, and she'd bail at the last minute. Sometimes it was, I'm too tired. Other times work stuff popped up. Once, she just said she wasn't feeling it. At first, I gave her space. Everyone hits a rough patch, but the pattern became impossible to ignore. Her excuses felt thin, like she was dodging me rather than being genuinely swamped. It's a quiet kind of pain when the person you love starts to feel like they're slipping away and you're left grasping at what's fading. Worse, when we were together, she wasn't really there. I'd be sitting across from her at a brewery, and she'd be glued to her phone, texting, scrolling, laughing at something I couldn't see. It hurt because when I called, she was always too busy to pick up, but in person, her phone was her world. I started wondering who was on the other end. What was so urgent it trumped our time together? I brought it up once, softly. I feel like we're not connecting, I said. It's like you're somewhere else. Instead of hearing me, she got sharp, calling me insecure and dramatic. That cut deep. I wasn't trying to point fingers. I just wanted us back. The more I tried to talk, the icier she got. The warmth we'd once had, the late-night talks, the shared dreams, started to fade. Every attempt to express how I felt turned into a fight, with her spinning my words to make me feel like the problem. I started pulling back, not out of spite, but exhaustion. I was tired of begging for her attention, of feeling like I was shouting into the dark. Our weekends, once our haven, changed too. Amara used to come over every Saturday, and we'd cook, watch movies, or just catch up. But she started skipping them, blaming errands, family stuff, or on nothing at all. I'd wait, hoping she'd show, only to face silence. Doubt crept in, and I started questioning everything she told me. I still wanted to believe we could salvage it. Maybe I was clinging to hope, but I wasn't ready to let go of the woman I'd planned a life with. I decided to make a real effort, something to pull us back together. That Friday, I planned a simple day, a stroll through a botanical garden, followed by dinner at her favorite taco joint. I checked her schedule, made sure she was free, and ran through our recent conversations to ensure I wasn't missing any tension. Everything seemed clear. I was hopeful this could remind us what we were holding on to. But when I called her that morning, buzzing with anticipation, she didn't answer. I waited, sent a text. "Hey, call me when you get this. Got something special planned for us." Minutes stretched into an hour, then two. My mind started to spiral, but I fought the urge to overthink. When she finally called back, I laid out the plan, the garden walk, the dinner, the chance to reconnect. Her response was a flat, "That won't work." Confused, I asked why. She paused, then said, "I've got a date." The words landed like a blow. I went silent, not because I was at a loss, but because I couldn't process it. A date? With who? Why? All I could muster was a quiet, "All right." Then I hung up. In that moment, everything clicked, the excuses, the distance, the half-truths. The woman I was set to marry had just thrown our future away like it was nothing. And the silence that followed, it spoke louder than any excuse ever could. The moment I hung up the phone, the weight of Amara's words, "I've got a date," settled over me like a fog. My apartment, usually a refuge, felt suffocating. I sat there, staring at the blank screen of my phone, waiting for something, a text, a call, an explanation. Anything to undo the gut punch of what she'd just said. But nothing came. Hours passed, and the silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. It wasn't just her words, it was the casual way she'd said them. Like our 3 years together, our engagement, our plans were all disposable. That's when I knew, deep down, the wedding was off. There was no coming back from this. I didn't cry or yell. I just felt hollow. My mind kept replaying the last few months. The missed calls, the canceled plans, the way she'd been pulling away. It was like a puzzle I'd been too stubborn to solve, and now the pieces were snapping into place. I've been fighting for someone who'd already checked out. By 6 p.m., my phone lit up. It was Amara. I let it ring, watching her name flash on the screen. A minute later, a text popped up. "Are you mad?" I stared at it, almost laughing at how small it felt compared to what she'd done. Mad? That didn't even scratch the surface. Another text followed. "Can I come over?" That's when I typed back, "Don't come to my place." Short, final, no room for misinterpretation. I think that's when it hit her that this wasn't just a fight we'd brush off. Then the flood came. Texts poured in, one after another. She claimed the date was a joke, that she'd just been messing around and didn't mean it. "You're taking this way too seriously," she wrote. She said she'd been swamped with work, that she hadn't meant to ignore me, that I was blowing it out of proportion. The excuses were flimsy, piling up like a house of cards. I didn't respond. When text didn't work, she sent voice messages. Her voice cracked as she spoke, tears evident. "Caleb, you're shutting me out. This isn't fair. I didn't mean it like that." She said my silence was cruel, that I was hurting her by not talking. I listened to every word, but what I heard wasn't remorse. It was desperation. She wasn't sorry. She was scared because I wasn't chasing her anymore. I'd spent months trying to reach her, trying to bridge the gap she'd created. I'd swallowed my pride, ignored the red flags, and convinced myself we could fix it. But hearing her say she had a date, even if she claimed it was a joke, was the final straw. If you love someone, you don't toy with their heart like that. You don't let them plan a special day, then brush it off with something so careless. And you don't wait hours to clarify, leaving them to drown in doubt. Her tears didn't move me, not because I was heartless, but because I was done being the one who always bent. The next day, she doubled down. She called again, and when I didn't pick up, she showed up at my apartment. I was in the middle of making coffee when I heard the knock. My stomach twisted, but I didn't open the door. I stood there, listening as she knocked again, her voice muffled through the wood. "Caleb, please just talk to me." I didn't budge. Eventually, she left, but not before slipping a note under the door. It was a page of apologies, saying she'd been stressed, that she hadn't been herself, that she still loved me. She begged for a chance to explain in person. I read it, folded it, and tossed it in a drawer. Words are cheap when actions don't back them up. By Monday, she'd roped in mutual friends. My phone buzzed with messages from people we both knew, asking me to hear her out. One friend, Marcus, called and said, "Look, man, she says it was a dumb joke. She's a mess right now. Maybe give her a chance." I appreciated his concern, but I was blunt. She made her choice. I'm done. I wasn't angry with him. He didn't know the full story, but I wasn't about to let anyone guilt me into going back. Amara had spent months showing me where I stood, and that date comment was just the final nail. What started to grate on me was how she began spinning the story. A week later, I got a message from a coworker who barely knew us. "Heard you broke things off over a misunderstanding." That's rough. Another acquaintance mentioned Amara had told them I was too sensitive and couldn't handle her sense of humor. It was almost impressive how quickly she'd turned herself into the victim. I didn't bother correcting people. If she needed to rewrite history to sleep at night, that was her problem. I wasn't here to play her game anymore. But the truth is, walking away wasn't clean or simple. I wish I could say I felt empowered, like I'd reclaimed my strength and moved on with a clear head. Instead, it was messy. I was angry, sure, but I was also heartbroken. You don't spend 3 years loving someone, planning a life together, and just shrug it off when it falls apart. I'd given her everything, my time, my trust, my future, and it still wasn't enough. There were nights I lay awake, replaying every moment, wondering if I could have done something differently. Had I missed a sign earlier? Could I have fought harder? But then I'd remember her voice, so casual, saying she had a date, and the questions would fade. I wasn't the one who checked out. The hardest part was the quiet. My apartment, once filled with our laughter, felt too big without her. I'd walk past the couch where we used to binge shows, or the kitchen where we'd burn pancakes, and it'd hit me all over again. I didn't miss her, not the version of her who'd hurt me, but I missed what we'd been. I missed the Amara who'd light up when I walked into a room, who'd text me random memes just to make me laugh. That Amara was gone long before the date comment, and I'd been too stubborn to admit it. I started to see things clearer in the weeks that followed. The distance, the excuses, the phone obsession, it wasn't just stress or a busy schedule. There was something or someone pulling her attention away. I didn't have proof, and I didn't need it. Her actions told me enough. But the questions still lingered. Was there really a date, or was it a cruel jab? If it was a joke, why let me stew in silence for hours? And if it wasn't, who was she with, and how long had it been going on? I pushed those thoughts aside, but they'd creep back, especially at night. Then, 2 weeks after the call, I got an email from her. It was long, polished, like she'd spent hours crafting it. She apologized again, but this time she admitted she'd been distant and unfair. She said she'd been struggling with work and personal stuff, and instead of talking to me, she'd pulled away. She swore the date thing was a bad attempt at humor, meant to lighten the mood. She wanted to meet to fix things. For a moment, I considered it, not because I wanted her. The email from Amara sat in my inbox like a weight I couldn't ignore. Her words, carefully chosen, laced with regret, stirred something in me, but not the way she hoped. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if meeting her could bring clarity, maybe even closure. But then I remembered the months of distance, the excuses, and that gut-wrenching date comment. The woman I'd loved wasn't the one writing that email. That Amara had faded long before, and I wasn't about to chase a ghost. I didn't reply. Instead, I archived the email and told myself it was time to let go. Easier said than done. The days that followed were a blur of routine. Work, gym, repeat. I threw myself into projects at the logistics company, staying late to avoid the quiet of my apartment. But no matter how busy I kept myself, Amara's shadow lingered. I'd catch myself checking my phone, half expecting a new message, even though I'd blocked her number after the email. It wasn't that I wanted her back. It was the habit of her, the muscle memory of 3 years together. Breaking that was harder than I'd imagined. About 3 weeks after the call, I ran into a mutual friend, Jenna, at a coffee shop. She'd been close to both of us, and I could tell she was hesitant to bring up Amara. But after some small talk, she did. "She's been talking about you," Jenna said, stirring her latte. So she messed up big time and wants to make it right. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. She told me the date thing was a stupid joke, Jenna continued, but she knows it was cruel. She's beating herself up over it. I sipped my coffee, letting the words hang. Jenna, I said finally, it wasn't just a joke. It was everything before it. She looked like she wanted to say more, but just nodded. I appreciated her not pushing. That conversation stuck with me, not because it changed my mind, but because it made me realize Amara was still trying to control the narrative. She was out there, painting herself as the remorseful fiancé who'd made a single mistake, while I was the stubborn one who wouldn't forgive. It was clever in a way, but it also made me angrier. She wasn't owning the months of neglect, the way she'd left me hanging, the half-truths that had eroded us. She was cherry-picking her guilt, and it felt like another betrayal. Then came the package. One evening, I came home to find a small box on my doorstep, my name scrawled in Amara's handwriting. My stomach churned as I picked it up. Inside was a photo frame, one we'd bought together during a weekend trip to Boulder. It held a picture of us laughing at a street fair, back when things were good. Tucked beside it was a letter. She wrote about how much she missed us, how she'd been lost in her own head, how she'd never meant to hurt me. She didn't mention the date comment directly, but alluded to missteps she wished she could take back. She ended with, "I'm not giving up on us, Caleb. Not yet." I sat on my couch, holding the frame, and for a moment, I felt the pull of the past. That photo was real. Our happiness had been real. But the letter? It was another performance. If she truly cared, she wouldn't have let me beg for her attention for months. She wouldn't have thrown out a line about a date and left me to drown in it. I put the frame in a drawer, next to her first note, and tossed the letter in the trash. I wasn't keeping souvenirs of someone who'd treated me like an afterthought. But the package did something else. It made me question what I didn't know. Had there been someone else? Was the date really a joke, or had she been testing the waters, seeing how I'd react? The thought gnawed at me, not because I wanted her back, but because I hated the idea of being played. I started replaying moments in my head, her phone obsession, the vague excuses the weekend she'd vanished. There were gaps I couldn't fill, and they were driving me crazy. I needed answers, not for reconciliation, but for my own peace. Against my better judgment, I unblocked her number and sent a single text. "We need to talk." One conversation, then we're done. She replied within minutes, eager, almost too eager. "Thank you, Caleb. Can we meet tomorrow? My place." I agreed, but I set the terms, a public place, a coffee shop near my office, Saturday morning. I wasn't stepping back in her world, and I wasn't giving her room to spin things. This was about getting the truth, or at least enough of it to close the door for good. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. I kept running through what I'd say, what I needed to know. Was there someone else? How long had she been pulling away? And why, after everything, did she think a few tears and apologies could fix it? I wasn't going to let her dodge or deflect. But I also knew I had to stay calm, keep my emotions in check. This wasn't about winning an argument. It was about walking away with my head clear. Saturday morning, I got to the coffee shop early. It was a small place, all exposed brick and warm light, but it felt like a battlefield. I grabbed a table in the corner, ordered a black coffee, and waited. My heart was steady, but my mind was racing. When Amara walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked tired, her usual spark dimmed. She spotted me, gave a nervous smile, and sat down. "Thanks for this," she said, her voice soft. I nodded, keeping my face blank. "Let's make this quick," I said. "I'm not here to fix things. I just need to know what happened." She fidgeted with her coffee cup, clearly unprepared for my tone. "Caleb, I'm so sorry," she started, but I cut her off. "I don't need apologies. I need the truth. The date, what was that? And don't tell me it was a joke." Her eyes widened, and for a second, I thought she'd cry. Instead, she took a deep breath and started talking. She swore there was no one else, that the date comment was a stupid, impulsive thing to get a reaction. "I was frustrated," she said. "You were always so steady, and I felt like I was falling apart. I wanted to see if you'd care." Her words hit like a slap. She'd hurt me on purpose, not because she was cheating, but because she wanted to test me. I leaned back, processing. And the months before that, I asked, The silence, the cancellations, the phone. What was that? She looked down, her hands twisting. I was overwhelmed, she said. Work was killing me, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I shut down. I know I pushed you away. It was the most honest she'd been, but it wasn't enough. You didn't just push me away, I said. You made me feel like I didn't matter. And then you threw that date thing in my face. Why should I believe you now? She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she didn't have a quick answer. The silence between us was heavy, and I realized something. Even if she was telling the truth, it didn't change what she'd done. Trust, once broken like that, doesn't just stitch back together. I stood up, my coffee untouched. I'm done, Amara. Don't contact me again. She started to protest, but I walked out, leaving her at the table. As I stepped into the crisp Denver air, I felt a strange mix of relief and ache. I'd gotten my answers, or as close to them as I'd ever get. But what did they mean for the future? And why did walking away still feel so heavy? Walking out of that coffee shop, leaving Amara behind, felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. The Denver air was sharp, biting at my face, but it was the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe. I'd gotten the answers I needed, or at least enough to know I wasn't crazy for walking away. Her admission that the date comment was a deliberate jab to test me wasn't a relief. It was a confirmation of how little she'd valued me. Yet, even with that clarity, the ache didn't vanish. 3 years of love don't just dissolve because you've closed the door. They linger, like echoes in an empty room. The weeks that followed were a strange limbo. I threw myself into work, taking on extra shifts at the logistics company to fill the silence. My apartment, once a shared space for Amara and me, felt like a museum of memories I didn't want to visit. I boxed up the little things she'd left behind, a scarf, a coffee mug, a stack of her favorite graphic novels, and dropped them at a thrift store. It wasn't about erasing her. It was about reclaiming my space. But every now and then, I'd catch myself staring at the empty spot on the shelf where our Boulder photo frame used to sit, and the weight would creep back. Amara didn't contact me again, which was both a relief and a sting. Part of me had braced for more texts, more notes, more pleas through mutual friends. Her silence was loud, though, and it spoke of acceptance or maybe just surrender. But her narrative was still out there, floating among our social circle. I'd hear whispers through coworkers or friends. Amara says you overreacted, or she feels like you didn't give her a chance to explain. It didn't surprise me. She'd always been good at shaping stories, especially when it came to saving face. I didn't bother setting the record straight. People would believe what they wanted, and I wasn't here to win a popularity contest. One evening, about a month after the coffee shop, I got a call from my old friend Darius. He'd been out of town for work and had only recently heard about the breakup. "Man, what happened?" he asked, his voice heavy with concern. I gave him the short version, the distance, the date comment, the confrontation. He listened quietly, then said, "Sounds like she was checking out long before she said that. You did the right thing." His words were simple, but they hit hard. It was the first time someone validated my choice without trying to soften it for Amara's sake. Darius invited me to a pickup basketball game that weekend, insisting I needed to get out of my head. I agreed, mostly to shut him up, but I was secretly grateful. That game was a turning point, small but real. Sweating out on the court, laughing with Darius and his crew, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in months. Lightness. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was proof I could still feel something other than hurt or anger. Afterward, over burgers at a nearby diner, Darius got serious. "You know, Caleb, you're not the one who lost here." She did. "Don't let this make you doubt yourself." I nodded, picking at my fries. He was right, but the truth was I did doubt myself. Had I been too rigid, too quick to walk away? Those questions still haunted me, even if I knew the answer deep down. The doubts grew quieter as I started rebuilding. I took up hiking again, something Amara and I used to do, but I'd let slide. The trails in the Rockies became my therapy, grueling climbs that left no room for overthinking. I also started journaling, scribbling thoughts late at night when the silence got too loud. It wasn't poetic, just raw. I loved her, but I can't love someone who doesn't show up. Writing it down made it real, helped me see the patterns I'd ignored. Amara's distance wasn't a phase. It was a choice, and I'd spent too long excusing it. Then, 2 months after the breakup, something unexpected happened. I was at a work event, a networking mixer at a downtown bar, when I ran into a former colleague, Maya. We'd worked together briefly a year ago and always got along. She asked how I was, and instead of the usual "I'm fine," I told her the truth. Not the whole saga, just enough. Rough couple of months. Ended an engagement. Her eyes softened, and she shared that she'd gone through a bad breakup the year before. "It sucks," she said, "but it gets better. You'll start feeling like you again." We talked for an hour about work, life, anything but Amara. It was the first conversation in ages that didn't feel heavy. Maya and I started grabbing coffee now and then, always platonic. She was easy to talk to, no pressure, no expectations. But her presence made me realize how much I'd missed connection. Not just romance, but real, honest conversation. It wasn't about replacing Amara. It was about remembering I deserved to be seen, not sidelined. Those coffee chats became a small anchor, a reminder that life was still moving forward, even if I wasn't fully ready to move with it. But just when I thought I was finding my footing, Amara resurfaced, not directly, but through a mutual friend's social media post. It was a group photo from a party, and there she was, smiling, arm around some guy I didn't recognize. The caption was vague, but the comments were telling. "You two look so happy." My stomach dropped. Was this the date she'd joked about? Or someone new? I didn't know, and I hated that it still got to me. I closed the app, but the image stuck, raising questions I thought I'd buried. Had she been honest at the coffee shop? Or was there more she'd hidden? And why, after all this, did I still care? I told myself it didn't matter. She was gone, and I was done chasing ghosts. But the photo lit a spark of curiosity, or maybe defiance. I wanted to know, not for her sake, but for mine. Was she living a lie? Or had she moved on that fast? I wasn't sure what I'd do with the truth, but I needed it to fully let go. The question was, how far was I willing to go to get it? The photo of Amara with that stranger burned in my mind longer than I wanted to admit. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was the nagging need to know if I'd been played, if the date she'd thrown in my face months ago was more than a cruel test. I tried to shake it off, to focus on the life I was rebuilding, but the questions clawed at me. Had she lied at the coffee shop? Was there someone else all along? I didn't want her back, but I needed the truth to bury the doubts for good. Chasing it felt like a risk, like reopening a wound, but I couldn't move forward with this shadow hanging over me. I didn't stalk her social media or do anything drastic. Instead, I reached out to Jenna, our mutual friend who'd mentioned Amara's regret weeks earlier. I kept it casual, asking her to grab lunch, no mention of the photo. Over sandwiches at a deli near my office, I steered the conversation to Amara, careful not to sound obsessed. "Heard she's been at some parties," I said, testing the waters. Jenna hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, she's been out more. Try to keep busy, I guess." I pressed a little, saw a photo with some guy. "She moving on already?" Jenna's face tightened, like she'd been caught. "That's complicated," she said. "It's not serious, but she's been hanging out with someone. Started after you guys split." Her words landed heavy, but not surprising. After the split. That meant the date comment probably wasn't about this guy. Or so I told myself. Jenna didn't know much more, just that Amara had met him through work, a photographer on one of her projects. "She's not herself, Caleb," Jenna added. "She's trying to act like she's fine, but she's a mess." I nodded, thanking her for the honesty, but inside, I felt a strange relief. Not because Amara was struggling, but because the timeline lined up. There was no proof she'd cheated, no hidden affair to rewrite our history. The date was likely what she'd claimed, a mean-spirited jab, not a confession. It didn't make it hurt less, but it gave me something solid to stand on. I left lunch with a clarity I hadn't expected. Amara's new life, whatever it was, didn't matter anymore. She could rewrite her story, spin it for friends, or cling to someone new. It wasn't my problem. I'd spent months questioning myself, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too quick to walk away. But the truth was simpler. She'd stopped showing up for me long before that call, and I deserved better than her half-hearted apologies. Knowing there was no grand betrayal didn't erase the pain, but it loosened its grip. I could finally start letting go. Life began to shift after that. The hikes in the Rockies, the basketball games with Darius, the coffee chats with Maya. They weren't just distractions anymore. They were pieces of a new rhythm. I started saying yes to things I'd avoided. A coworker's board game night, a solo trip to a music festival in Boulder. Each step felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost in the fog of Amara's neglect. My journal entries grew less raw, more reflective. I'm not who I was with her, and that's okay. I'm finding my way. The doubts that had haunted me, was I enough? Could I have saved us? Faded, replaced by a quiet resolve. I was enough, and I hadn't failed by walking away. Maya became a bigger part of my life, though not in the way people might assume. Our coffee meetups turned into hikes or movie nights, always easy, never forced. She wasn't a rebound. She was a friend who reminded me what it felt like to be heard. One evening, over pizza, after watching a sci-fi flick at a local theater, she said something that stuck. But different now, Caleb. Lighter, like you're not carrying her anymore. I smiled, realizing she was right. Amara's shadow was gone, not because I'd found someone new, but because I'd found myself again. The final piece fell into place 6 months after the breakup, when I got an unexpected message from Marcus, another mutual friend. He'd run into Amara at a gallery event and mentioned it offhand. She asked about you, man. Seemed like she wanted to reach out, but didn't know how. I waited for the old ache to hit, but it didn't. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a calm certainty that she was part of my past, not my present. I told Marcus to wish her well, and I meant it. I didn't need her regret or her closure. I had mine. Looking back, I see the lessons carved into this mess. First, don't ignore the slow bleed of neglect. It starts small, missed calls, vague excuses, but it chips away at you until you're begging for scraps. Second, believe people when they show you who they are. Amara's actions screamed louder than her apologies, and I wasted too long hoping she'd change. And finally, walking away isn't failure. Sometimes it's survival. I didn't lose myself when I lost her. I found the strength to demand more. Now, I'm not saying I'm whole, or that I've got it all figured out. There are still nights when I wonder what could have been, but they're rare. I'm building something new, not just with others, but with myself. And if I could tell anyone going through this one thing, it's this: you deserve someone who shows up, not someone you have to chase. Don't settle for less, because the cost is too damn high. So I'm curious, what would you have done in my shoes? If the person you loved pulled a stunt like Amara's date comment, would you have stayed to fight or walked away like I did? And if you've ever had to rebuild after a betrayal, how did you find your way back to yourself? Share your thoughts. I'm listening. And if this story hit you, pass it on. Someone out there needs to hear it.